Hello, everyone. Here is another update about my time here at BSSM. I am currently wrapped up in a sparkly, shimmery mermaid blanket because I'm freezing. It went from like 110 degrees here in Reading to like 50 overnight, and I'm not okay with it. Um, anyways, so I mentioned in a previous video about an encounter I had with God, which helped me to realize that God is seeking intimacy here with me while I'm here at BSSM, Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry. So I'm about to tell you what happened. So 2 nights ago, what's today, the 13th? Yeah, so like on the night of the 11th, technically it'd be the morning of the 12th because I was up till like 5 a.m. But anyways, on the night of the 11th, um, man, I had this crazy encounter with Jesus, in which he made it very clear to me that there's something in my life that I needed to let go of. Now, the way that he brought this to my attention was very interesting. So maybe a week or so ago, I got a random message from some person I don't know on Facebook. You know how you can get like message requests from people that aren't friends. And anyways, this guy, we'll just call him Joe. Joe messaged me, and I don't know, commented or was making some kind of comment about something I had posted or whatever. And then he said that he felt like God had a specific word for me. And I was like, okay, now being here at Bethel, that's the whole someone having a word for you is like a lot more common, and I'm starting to get used to it because where I'm from, like that's not a thing. If someone said I have a word for you, I'd be like, what do you mean? Like, but I'm starting to understand. Turns out Joe used to actually be a student at BSSM, so I felt comfortable talking to him. Anyways, the word that he gave me was like the most specific and on point word that I think I've ever gotten in my entire life. Not that I've received like a ton because, this whole thing is new to me, but I can't even begin to tell you, like, this guy doesn't know me. I don't know him, right? And he like spoke things specifically into my life that I was like, how in the world does he know this, right? So I knew like God must have revealed it to him. And what he said in his word isn't the point of this video, but the fact that he shared that caused me to like trust what he has to say and trust that like God was using him to tell me something, right? So that established like a rapport. Anyway, so like we started talking a little bit, and he asked a question and I answered, and it immediately touched on this thing in my life. And I can't be specific, and I'm sorry, I hate being vague and like beating around the bush with things. It's not because I'm ashamed of it, or that I'm trying to be secretive, or that I don't feel comfortable being open about my life, but it doesn't involve just me, so I can't really like speak openly and plainly about it. But there's this thing in my life that he touched on, that has been a source of pain for me, of feeling very miserable and hopeless about the circumstance and the situation. Now the thing itself isn't bad. But how many of you know that like things don't have to be inherently bad for them to be bad for you, right? Even too much of a good thing is still bad. Like water's great, but if I drank like 5 gallons in one day, I could get really sick, and like my electrolytes would get all imbalanced, and like I could maybe die because you have to have certain balances of things. Anyways, the point is, this thing in my life wasn't like inherent sin, um, but too much of it or putting it in the wrong place in your life can become a bad thing. So like I was going to this thing fulfill my needs, my need for intimacy, connection, um, feeling known, feeling seen. And all those things aren't bad either. It's just when you put something in the place where God should be that it becomes a problem. So, it's like brownies aren't a problem, right? Like having a brownie is fine. But like when you have plates and plates of them and you don't eat anything else, that's a problem, right? So I guess the reason why I've been struggling with this thing for so long is that this thing wasn't inherently wrong. It was actually like really beautiful and really good. It's just that the position I had put it in, or the the position I had placed it in my life was the incorrect position. So like if this position is supposed to be filled with only God, I was taking this thing that was good and putting it there where God should have been. And so this guy Joe spoke into my life and touched on that. And I was like, yeah, I see that. Right. And so we had like a 3-hour talk. Like we talked from like 9 p.m. till midnight. And with this complete stranger. And I don't even know like what caused me to like really open up to him about this, because this isn't like something that I've really talked to with other people much at all, because like I said, it doesn't concern just me. It involves others. And so I couldn't really talk about it without betraying like confidences and stuff. Anyways, yeah, but like I trusted this guy Joe because of the accuracy that he had spoken to my life previously. So anyways, taking too long. Anyways, it got to the point where like I'm having, he's telling me all these things, speaking into my life, showing me like how I've turned this thing that was actually good and I've made it a sin, and all these things. And I'm like realizing that like I'm gonna have to let this go, right? Like I've come to BSSM to develop intimacy with God, to hear His voice and fall in love with Him, and like understand who I am in Him, my identity with Him, and the love of the Father. And God's been trying to give me that, but like the space that was meant for Him has already been filled with this other thing. And so God can't fill something that's already filled, right? And so I felt God like saying, like, if you really want intimacy with me, are you willing to let go of the other thing that you're already receiving your intimacy from? Like, you don't need intimacy with me if you're already getting it from somewhere else. And the thing is, like, we may think that we're fulfilling our needs in other things, but it's temporary and it's not lasting, it's not fulfilling, and you have to keep going back, and it doesn't bring true satisfaction. And so like I thought, I'm trying to fulfill my needs in a way that can't be met, and that leads to misery, it leads to feeling hopeless, like a lack of joy. And that's where I have been for like such a long time. I've been wondering, like, why am I like not experiencing joy and all these things? And like God told me, like, it's rooted in this issue. Something that God told me is like, sin always leads to misery, always. Like, maybe not right away, but it eventually, the consequences will always be misery. And so he's like, he told me, like, he whispered very gently, and like, he's such a good father. Like, he doesn't say condemningly, but he's saying it like as an invitation, like, to come out. He was like, if you're living in constant misery, it's probably because you're living in a sin constantly that you don't realize that's causing the misery. And I was like, yo, you're right, God. So anyways, that night, I was talking to Joe, and in the middle of our conversation, he interrupted and he's like, hey, take this lightly, but I just had the sense, he's talking to me, that an angel just walked into your room. And I was like, no one's ever told me that before, one. And two, like, that's this whole supernatural, like, angels thing, like, is kind of a new thing. Like, I believe in angels, obviously, like, they're in the Bible, whatever. But like experiencing them in my life is like somehow different in my mind than like, believing theologically that they exist, right? So like having like the thought of like angels being in my room like was just kind of it's something I wouldn't think of, right? It's not like a thing that I think of ever. So when he said that, I was like, it took me off guard a little bit, but then I immediately like had this image, like this mental image of this white shining bright figure like coming through my front door. Actually, let me just show you. So that's my front door. It's a glass door. I like saw like him like coming through the door and like standing like at a respectable, distance over by the bookshelf. And I was laying in the floor right where my dog is, like in a puddle of tears and, dramatically laying on the ground like my life was ending, which it felt like. um, anyways, so, and I was like, what was that? And I know a lot of people will be like, oh, well, you just imagined that. Like, because I didn't see it physically with my eyes, right? It's not like I saw it happen. It's just an image that like popped into my head, like a thought, like you can picture something in your head. And I'm definitely like one of those people that's like, well, you just thought it up, right? And a lot of people probably will hear this and say that too. And I get that, but at the same time, like this isn't something that like I said that I would think of that has ever occurred to me to think of. And then also like just because you see something with your eyes doesn't make it more real than if you like see it in your head. Because God used to come, like we see in the Bible lots of accounts of like people having angels appear to them in their eye in front of them and they see them with their eyes. But that was, in the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, when people were still living under the Old Covenant. But now, like under the New Covenant, like the Holy Spirit like dwells inside of us, right? Like he lives inside of us. So like God doesn't need to manifest things exteriorly, like outside of me. He can reveal things within me because he is in me. And so like a mental image is no less real or significant than like seeing it in front of me. And that's something that I've been learning. But anyways, so that happened. And then after I finished talking with Joe, I got to the point where I realized like I'm gonna have to make some radical changes in order to put this thing, which is good, but take it from where it's the position it's not supposed to be in to put it into the position where it's healthy and actually is good, because I've taken it, and by putting it in a wrong position it had become unhealthy. And I realized like I'm gonna have to make some radical changes in order to fix this, or it's gonna keep getting worse. And I'm not gonna be able to experience God because this is blocking me from developing the intimacy with him that I so desperately want. So I began to violently sob for like an hour, like straight. Like, man, like my throat was just like gone, like super raw. Like I don't know like how many of you have ever experienced like the ugly crying where it's so bad like you're like gasping and choking on like your own liquids coming out of you, like like I'm so glad that like I live alone and don't have housemates, because I'm pretty sure that like if I did live with housemates they would have been concerned I was actually dying and would have called like an ambulance. My dogs were so sweet though. They kept coming over to me and like trying to figure out like what's wrong with my human, like what is her malfunction, and like they didn't know if they should like lay next to me or like lick my face, and they're just like pacing and like circling me, and I'm like, I'm so sorry dogs, I'm a terrible mom, like I'm fine. But they're such good girls. There they are right there. I love them. They're so concerned. Anyways, and I wrote down some things that I had this conversation with Jesus. And I wrote down some stuff. Actually, let me just, oh, sorry. I wrote it down. Let me read it to you. So I'm a nerd and I type up things and then glue them into my journal. So please hold. Oh, wrong page. So as I was talking with Jesus, oh, here it is. I was like, Jesus, I can't do this. What if you don't come through and you don't show up? And I heard him say, there is no other option other than victory, because I will never stop trying to reach you. And I said, Jesus, how long? And I knew I had to give up this thing, like not just reduce my use, like with the brownies thing. It's not like if you're eating a whole plate of brownies every day, that's bad, right? But I was thinking like, well, maybe I can just reduce it to one brownie, a week instead of 70 brownies a week, thinking like, well, that's a good compromise. And God's like, no, like in order to like get this thing to a place where it's healthy, like you just need to cut it off, like so I can begin the healing process. And I was like, okay, but for how long? Like we're talking about like a week or two or like a month or whatever. And so I was like, okay, Jesus, for how long? I can't imagine my life without this. Like 1 month, 2, I need some kind of framework here, Jesus. Please, I need something to go off of. And Jesus said, I don't want you focused on the time frame and the finish line. I want you to approach me with an open hand. And that is not the answer I wanted. And then I continue sobbing, and I'm like, Jesus, I'm already so miserable just thinking about it. Just thinking about giving this up. I'm alone, isolated. Where am I going to get my intimacy needs from? Who am I going to talk to? And then this is what I heard Jesus say. I heard Jesus say, are you willing to give up worldly comfort to receive my comfort? Are you willing to let go of earthly intimacy for intimacy with me? Are you willing to forego human companionship for the companionship that I provide? Are you willing to fall out of love in order to fall in love with me? Are you willing to trust me even when you don't understand, even unto the very end? And so after that, of course, I entered into another long stretch of violent wailing. And I had two more images of like these angels that just popped into my head. And like, I don't think about angels ever. So like, this was just super weird. So I'm like laying in a heap on the floor on this rug, right? Like being super dramatic. And like, I just like suddenly like I had this image of like 3 angels like surrounding me like in a circle and like putting their wings like over me, like all okay, not right now. Putting their wings all around, and all of their wings were like really big and like encircling me, so it like formed like this cocoon of like light and protection, where like I'm laying in the middle of like this ball of light, and like all the darkness around me, like protecting me and like shielding me from like all the pain, even as I'm crying. And then after I got to the place where like I finally was willing to let it go, and like with an open hand, right? Like not knowing for how long, but like trusting God to reveal it to me. I felt like, like after my tears were spent, I just kind of like entered into this quiet place of like, weirdly enough, like worship, which I didn't feel like worshiping. I was like very upset, feeling the pain, but like after I had decided like, okay, God, like I release this to you, like God told me this, or God brought this story into my mind, and I actually, let me read it to you. Immediately the story of a little girl who had this beaded necklace of plastic pearls that she loved and wore everywhere until the cheap paint was chipped off and it wasn't very pretty anymore popped into my mind. Every day her father would come up to her asking, "Daughter, do you love me?" And she would say, "Yes, Daddy, I love you." And her father would say, "Then give me your necklace." And every time the little girl would turn away sadly, not wanting to give up her necklace of plastic pearls. Finally, one day, with her lip trembling and voice wavering, the little girl approached her daddy, saying, "Here, Daddy, you can have my pearls." Her father took the cheap dollar store string of plastic pearls from his daughter's hand and pulled her into an embrace, and she began to sob. When her tears were quenched, her father reached into his pocket and pulled out a beautiful, elegant necklace strung with real pearls, precious beyond measure, and slipped it around his daughter's neck. Real pearls for her plastic. And the father said, "I lay down any treasure for us to be together." This is a story that I've heard like years ago, but it was immediately brought to my remembrance. And remember when I was saying before, like, I was like, well, can I just reduce this thing to once a week? And then Jesus asked me he gently asked me, like, how ridiculous would it sound for the little girl to ask her dad, like, "Daddy, like, thank you for the real pearls. But I'll give you my necklace, but can I just have my plastic pearls once a week?" And like the ridiculousness of that, like put into perspective of like what I was trying to like ask God for, when he's like, "Do you trust me? Like I have something so much better." And at that moment, like I had my third thought of like angels, right? I I was still laying on the floor. I was laying on the floor from like midnight to like 5 a.m., literally just crying and, leaking. So I was laying on the floor right there, and I had this image of like the ceiling, just like the roof, like opening like into like the clouds and the heavens. And like these angels were like coming down with clusters of grapes and like offering them to me. And which makes sense that the angels would appear right over the fridge because that is where the grapes would be. And my voice was like so raw and so dry, right? And like I heard the angels saying, well, not heard, but like in my mind heard them saying like, your lover, hold on, well, it's fine. Your lover refreshes you with grapes. His right arm is under your head, and his banner over you is love. And that's a paraphrase, or not a direct quote, but because I don't know by heart, but of like a verse in Song of Solomon where they're saying like, you refresh me with grapes, your arms under my head, your banner over me is love. But like that was like from Jesus to me. And I could feel like the soothing, like the soothing in my mouth and in my throat, like, and like I imagined the taste of grapes like to refresh me. And it was just like really crazy because I was like, where are these thoughts coming from? And it was just really awesome. I kind of drew, they're not good drawings, so please don't judge me, but like just to kind of like document, I like to document things if you haven't noticed. My experience, I kind of drew some pictures. So this kind of gives you an idea of like what I was experiencing. So like this is the one I was talking about, like in the little cocoon with the angels surrounding me, except there's only 2 in this picture and I had 3. I just couldn't figure out how to like put a 3rd one like over here because again, not an artist. And then this one, the heavens opening up and that looks like a blob, so I tried again and made some better grapes this time. And the little banner says his banner over me is love. Anyways, yeah, so it was a crazy encounter. And the funny thing is, like, I finally went to bed. I felt so broken, like, guys, it was so painful. Like, I felt like my heart was being like ripped open, right? Anyway, so I went to bed finally at like 5 a.m. And then the next day, like, I woke up and like I just felt so, sorry, I was just checking the time. I felt so peaceful. And I was like, why do I feel so peaceful? Like, why do I feel happy? Like, I was like, I should feel devastated and still broken. Like, what's going on? Right. And like, I heard God tell me, like, their sorrow may last for the night, joy comes in the morning. And I was like, wow. And I was like, but why am I feeling joyful though? Because this is still hard and I'm still not over this. And he was like, you're experiencing you're experiencing the misery of your sin. Now you're experiencing the joy of your obedience. And I was like, wow, like so good. Anyways, I hope this is an encouragement to someone here. Like, yeah, God wants to fill you up with so much intimacy, but it's really hard for him to do that, like when there's no space for him. Like, it's hard to fall in love with him when you're already in love with other things. So that's my encouragement to you all. If there's something hindering you from real intimacy and love with God, even if it's not something bad, I encourage you to ask yourself, like, what are you willing to give up? Are we willing to lay down any treasure for us to be together with him? Bye, guys.